Our first speaker this morning is Mark Hartman. He is currently COO and Director of Blackjack Silver Corporation with properties in Butte, Montana. And he's going to speak about Expiration of Butte by Blackjack Silver.
So thank you for coming to hear about Blackjack Silver. Blackjack Silver is the parent company, and we have a subsidiary called Butte Blackjack Operating. That's the operating arm that's in Butte. So thanks for coming to hear what we have to say. So the forward-looking statements, and what I really want to highlight in here is any discussion I have about reserves or resources are not 43-101 compliant. So everything I talk about in here is historical in nature only. So we have not created any official 43-101 compliant resource at this point. So what do we have? We have a world-class, intensely mineralized system. So we are in Butte, Montana. We are looking at the old Anaconda underground mining operations. So it's a huge mineral resource, and by 1915, Anaconda had made this the largest copper producer in the world. We are a private company. We're earning into a 50-year mining lease that is extendable once we're in operation. We've raised $11 million to date. We currently have a cash balance of $3 million, which is more than sufficient to do what we want to do in the near term. So what do we have? We have historical resources, again, not 43-101 compliant. We have a 300 million ounce silver equivalent in historical resources. These are high grade, they're in high confidence categories with high quality data. Now, please remember that Anaconda, when they were here, they were a world-class organization with the best of the best. So they had a great geology, engineering, operations staff. And we're very fortunate that they left a lot of great information that we have available to us, including drill information, their drill logs, stope assays. They did their mapping that they did underground was second to none, just very, very high level data. In addition to that, in the 1990 era, a company called New Butte Mining came in for a few years and did some other activity as well. And their drill cores that they have, their drill logs, we have access to all of that. So we have just a plethora of information available to us that is very high quality. So some of the resources, so Anaconda is a zinc-rich resource. It had 3.8 million tons of nearly 10% zinc. Their copper-rich resource, what they considered to be developed and probable, and just an aside, the categories they had were developed, probable, and future, very similar to the proven, probable, and possible of the SEC requirements. So they have a developed and probable of 1.5 million tons running a 4% copper. And so most of those resources are underwater, water controlled by the Berkeley pit. The New Butte mining numbers, so the high-grade resources that they identified were 5 million tons, running just under 10 ounces of silver and 7.5% zinc. In the Rainbow block, and then they also had in the Margaret Ann block, they had another 2 million tons of resources that ran 2/10 gold and 20 ounces of silver. So you can see that there's a very significant resource that's available to us. The New Butte mining resources are all above water, whereas the majority of the Anaconda resources are below water. Any permitting or mining that we are going to do is going to be above water. So we will not have to treat water. We will not be discharging water. None of the water out of our process is going to hit the environment. So what do we have from an exploration upside? Obviously, there's extension of historical resources along strike. As you get out a little farther away from the central core area, you get into higher grades of gold and silver. And of course, from an exploration standpoint, also below water, if you use the the Lexington shaft as a baseline, the water is about 900 feet down in that shaft. If you're a little higher up on the hill on the Rainbow vein itself, it's maybe 1,000 to 1,100 feet of depth that we have available for mining before we get into the water. So obviously we are in an active mining area with Montana Resources pit, immediately adjacent to the property. And it's a favorable infrastructure. We have water, power, roads literally to the site. Railroad is nearby. We're fortunate to have Montana Tech and Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology that's right nearby as well. So, it's a great place to be working. So how do we de-risk the property? Now, please keep in mind that most junior mining companies, when they're out looking for properties, they have the risk of mining claims. They have the risk of quality of the ore body, the quantity of the resource, the metallurgical requirements, and certainly permitting and financing. We're in a position where we don't have the first four. I mean, we are on patented or fee land. We have the quantity and quality of the resource is known. Obviously, there's going to be some fine tuning as to the exact grade and the exact tonnage, but it's a large ore body that's available to us, a large resource that's available to us. And there's 100 years of metallurgy, of milling that's already been done on it. So at this point, our risks are going to be in financing and in permitting, which is the risk that any junior mining company will have. In fact, many established mining companies have those same risks. So how do we de-risk it? So we are in the process. In fact, we have completed the 3D geologic model. So we have it internally done. We have submitted the internal model to the resource, to the official 43101 resource modelers. We expect to have the resource model, the 43101 compliant model done within a month. With that, then we will have the narrative that goes with it. So within a month and a half, perhaps 2 months, we should have all the 43101 requirements completed. We completed a phase 1 surface drilling program. We have a phase 2 planned, albeit at this point we probably won't pursue it in the near term simply because the resource model that we have is so robust that we likely will wait till we go underground to where we can do some infill drilling rather than focusing at this point on exploration drilling. We don't need to be successful with exploration for this project to be successful. We've also permitted already the underground rehabilitation of the Chief Joseph tunnel. We've also deferred to wait on this as well because we've determined after we've looked at our 3D modeling that this may not be in the best location, and it also may not be the right size for us. So even though we're permitted for it, we may not pursue it at least in 2022. So what is our next step then? So 43101 resource estimate, again, we're going to be done with that here within the next month or two. And we plan on pursuing a PEA and or an IPO, perhaps both, come this summer and working into the fall. So what do we have? We have 3 claim blocks, the Margadan, the Rainbow, and the Travona, 2 of which we're pursuing. So the Margadan is in the blue, and the Rainbow block is in the reddish color. We have 203 patented mining claims, 1,640 acres of mineral rights. The majority of it being in the Rainbow and the Margadan block. And so we're not pursuing the Travona at this point. So most of the people in this room know more about the geology than I do, so I won't belabor the point. As you know, in the central area of the district is where you have the higher grade copper, and of course that's where the Berkeley and the Continental pits are. As you move out away from the porphyry, you get into what's called the transitional zone, and excuse me. You have to be smarter than the clicker. So as you get into the transitional zone, you get into less copper and more zinc. And so the transitional zone is going to be, I don't know if you can see the red dot, but it's going to be more in this area. And as you get farther out into the peripheral zone, you get into more silver and zinc and gold. So the further outlying portions of our property get into more precious metals and higher grade zinc. Interestingly, we've also done some work on the shoulders or on the margins of the vein systems. So we're fortunate that we not only have anaconda cores, but we have all of the, or a majority of the New Butte mining cores from the drilling in the 1990-ish era. And we did a lot of sampling on the shoulders, or again, on the margins of the vein, and have found that we run from 1 to 3 ounce per ton silver equivalent for 1 to 3 feet on either side of the vein. And why is this important? Some of the veins are fairly narrow, maybe 3 to 4 feet in width, and so you're going to end up with mining dilution. Initially, our thought was that the dilution was going to have 0 value. But now, being that we have done this, we can determine that our dilution is going to have some value in it, which is again, very positive for us. So again, this is kind of a summary of what we had before. So the rainbow block is 5 million tons of resource identified by Butte Mining. And so what do these numbers mean? 5 million tons. Again, you look at the Montana Resources pit that is next to us, and they have a lot of zeros after their numbers. So how big is 5 million tons? So I have decades of experience in narrow vein mining, and when I managed the Sunshine Mine in North Idaho, we were able to get it up to 900 to 1,000 tons a day. And the Sunshine Mine is the largest historical silver mine in the country. So 900 to 1,000 tons a day was our maximum production, 5 days a week. That equates to 250,000 tons a year of production. So you look at that 5 million ton number, and that if the resource was there as identified in this slide, that's a 20-year mine life just in that one resource alone, just to kind of put it in perspective as to the size of this. Market and Block is just immediately to the north of us. Can all be accessed via the same underground workings if that is our desire to do that. And again, you're running at 2/10 gold and 20 ounces of silver. And in the areas in this chart where it does not have any assay results, like for the lead and the zinc, and or for the gold in the anaconda, it's because they didn't assay for it. Doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that there was no assay data available for us. So there may be some other resource, zinc or lead and or copper resource available to us. So what was our phase 1 exploration program? So we actually drilled 8 holes in 2021. We sent 219 core splits to the assay labs, many of them being traditional veins, and some of them, of course, being shoulders or the margins of the veins, so we can determine what the dilution value would be. And we targeted mainly the Missoula horsetails and the Alice rainbow vein systems, 2 very high-grade, massive systems. So we also were able to examine the historic core. We had about 2,100 boxes, and we ran out of fingers and toes after a while, and so there may have been more than 2,100 boxes available to us. We were able to send 456 of those core splits to the assay lab. We resampled the previously assayed veins and sampled the previously unassayed intervals and shoulders of the main veins. You know, that looked a lot easier when I wrote that than the way it sounds when I read it. But essentially what that means is if there was already an assay taken, a split of the vein, resplit the vein again to send it out so that we could check the original assays. And we also found a number of veins that were unassayed, so we split those and sent them for assays. And of course the shoulders, the majority of the shoulders of the veins that were identified were not assayed, so we took shoulder samples as well. And of course, in the process of doing that, we relogged the core, we photographed the core, determined RQD, did everything that you would do in modern day core evaluation. So with all of that information, we developed 3D modeling. So our consultant Rangefront digitized over 10,000 maps of all working shafts, stopes, drill holes, etc. Whatever was available, they digitized, and the majority of those were, again, above water. So we're focusing on staying above water in this resource. They also were able to utilize historic channel samples from the stopes and the drifts. There's thousands and thousands of assay reports that Anaconda developed. And again, the quality of work that they did was amazing. The other thing that's interesting with Anaconda is they had the ability to write smaller than anyone I ever knew. So if you look at their maps, you have to have a magnifying glass to be able to read it because the writing is so small on it. So interestingly, when I first got involved with this project, I was told that Anaconda had a 7-foot minimum vein width in order for that vein to be in their resource. And I'm thinking, this sounds like some pretty good propaganda. It sounds like a way to sell this property to others. But when I read the ore reserve reports that were developed by Anaconda, that is a true statement. It says right in their reports that anything that's under a 7-foot vein width, that it is not considered part of their resource. And in the upper levels, there are an awful lot, there's a huge resource of veins that are under 7 feet. And that's one of the opportunities that we have here is the under 7-foot vein widths that were ignored or not put into the resource by Anaconda. And of course, we're utilizing the 3D modeling for the resource model, for our exploration planning, for our mine planning. This 3D model that we did using today's technology, so nothing that many of you haven't used before, but compared to what Anaconda days and even New Butte mining days back in 1990, this is light years ahead of the information that Anaconda and New Butte was able to utilize. So where was the core? This is the Badger hoist house is right here. I put this picture in just because it's a neat picture. You know, that's a picture of the Badger shaft. In the background is the Granite Mountain. Of course, in the background, further background is Montana Resources. Of course, the city of Butte over on the right side. Just a neat picture, so that's why I put it in there. So the core storage, it was in the Badger hoist house. Sorry about that. It was, so you can see a lot of the old core that was New Butte was actually, put in plastic. So it was very well maintained. The hoist house has a new roof on it, new being relative, but it's high and dry. No water gets into that hoist house, so the core was intact. It was in good shape. The boxes on the right are the Anaconda cores, and you can see there in the wooden boxes. So they were preserved fairly well also. This is a very sensitive clicker. Let me make sure I get to the right one. So this is previously unsampled intervals from the historic core. And so, being that we are sampling for gold and silver and lead and zinc, and we also sample for copper, I just didn't include it in the graph, we're able to make a silver equivalent. And so that puts things into numbers that are easier for us to look at. And so, silver equivalents, again, these are veins that were not sampled by New Butte mining. You can see some fairly significant intervals. So again, what do these numbers mean? What is a silver equivalent of 90 or even 13? And so again, I have decades of experience in narrow vein underground mining. And so generally speaking, if you can look at $100 to $125 rock, you're certainly going to cover the direct mining costs, and even perhaps more, into the milling and or the fixed costs. So a 5-ounce silver equivalent is rock that's in, it isn't going to make an economic mine at 5-ounce silver equivalent, but it's going to be rock that's interesting for us. So put that into perspective when you see the silver equivalents in some of these intervals. So this is an example of one of the outcrops. You can see, sorry about that. Have to be smarter than the clicker. So you can see our geology stakes and our flags. So this outcrop, the pay zone in it is about 30 feet wide. That runs 13 ounces of silver equivalent right on the surface. 2021, we had AK Drilling who did a great job for us, come in and do the drilling. Again, they did a good job for us. So what are some of our drill results? So this is the drilling that we did. The 41-foot interval, and these are intervals, not true thicknesses. That was an unexpected vein for us. We were expecting to be finding veined thicknesses anywhere from 2 to 4 feet in most of the veins, the rainbow vein system perhaps being a little bit wider. This was a surprise vein for us. Now you can start looking at different mining methods when you get veins that are thicker than 6 to 8 feet, driving mining costs down significantly. So, some very good success with our internal drilling program. So this is what our core looks like. Of course, the rhodochrosite gives it the pinkish color. The black is the zinc. The iron-rich sphalerite, I should say. Some of the lighter colored zinc is higher grade sphalerite because it has less iron in it. Red lines are just our split lines. Our geologists tried to make sure that we didn't get a nugget effect on one side of the core as compared to the other. So they put split lines on there for when we split our core. So these are some of the unmined historic drill holes that are available to us. Again, all of this is above water. And again, so you can see we're typically, so New Butte mining generally mined on veins that were 2 to 4 to maybe 5 feet wide. So, there's some big thicknesses in some of these veins that are historic and some very sweet silver equivalents, including in the Missoula area where they have high grade gold. And again, if a 5-ounce silver equivalent is of interest for us, you can see that there's some real sweet numbers in some of the historic cores available to us. So this is more of the same. Again, some good mining widths, Margaret Ann area, 26 foot of nearly 30-ounce silver, 36-ounce equivalent. Some very, very good numbers. The rainbow trenches are off of the surface. And again, these are historic in nature. We took one sample ourselves, which ended up at 30 feet wide, running 13-ounce equivalent. So a 92-foot trench perpendicular to the vein running nearly 10-ounce silver equivalent on the surface. This is an example of some of the some of the Anaconda information. I know you can't read it, but this is great detail showing the 1954 for the date, the sample number, the width of the vein, the zinc, lead, and silver is what they assayed for. And it shows where the assays were taken. And across the face, rather than take one sample across the face where you can get inherent biases by the sampler, they took multiple samples across the same face to reduce the sample bias that might be inherent. This is an example of what it looks like with our 3D modeling. This is very generic. We took out a lot of the stope works and stuff like that, but this shows the veins that we are modeling with some of our drill hole planning in it. And again, just another way of looking at the drilling, and this shows the information that we have from our drilling. And what's interesting is these veins are shown or are mapped underground, but there's very little drilling and very little mining that is done on many of these veins. So we were able to identify 93 veins in our internal modeling, of which there was enough data points on 58 of the veins to send them to the 43101 resource modeler. As a comparison, New Butte Mining, who did not have this kind of technology available to them, only had 18 veins identified. So shows what modern technology can do for us today. And again, these are just some of the exploration targets we have for us. We don't need to have exploration success for the operation to be successful, but it just shows some of the massive amounts of exploration targets. And again, if you look at these are 500-foot grid intervals. So these are massive targets available for us. Again, just a representation of what some of our exploration planning would be. So this is the only hole that's in this vein. So this is a 26-foot interval running 27 ounce per ton. It's the only hole on the vein. And so if you look at the other intervals in that same hole, those are also ore grade. So it's just a sweet exploration target. It's more of the same. It just shows how much information we have along the vein system. Just a massive amount of information. Again, just another view showing all of the good hits. Of course, the red and the magenta colors are the sweet stuff. So what are our next steps? So we've done the capital raise. We have a title opinion. We have the draft technical report. We've assembled a technical team. We have the digitization of the resource completed. We did the surface drill program. Resource modeling should be done again in a month or two at the most. Internally it's done. Externally for the 43101 it needs to get done. Technical report is nearly completed. Again, just has to be reviewed by the technical writers. We then, in the summer of 2022, will do a PEA and or an IPO. We're unsure of which one's going to come first. And then, of course, our plan is to start with the operations permitting. This is my chance to say, our group is the best thing since sliced cheese. A lot of people might think we're like smelly old cheese, but I can say that our operations staff that's on the ground, many, in fact, all of them are here today. What I can say is thank you guys. We would not be in a position we were in today if it hadn't been for the group of guys that are on the ground in Butte. So heartfelt thank you to all you guys that are on the ground. So with that, I will open it up for questions.